If you ask any voter, including lots of Democrats, what the Democratic Party is right now, you're often going to get two words that come up the most often: weak and woke. And it's that perception, particularly the woke part, that I think is a big problem for Democrats. And I tend to think a lot of it is not necessarily all of their policies, but the way that at least a part of the Democratic Party talks about those policies. So I was totally fascinated to come across a memo by a group called Third Way, which is a centrist left think tank. The memo is called "Was It Something I Said?" And what's fascinating about it is it documents 45 words and phrases that, according to Third Way, Democrats should absolutely 100% stop using. I want to get to those, and I want to talk more broadly about how other people in the Democratic Party have sent a similar message post 2024. But let's just go through what the theory of these 45 words is for Third Way. They write this: for a party that spends billions of dollars trying to find the perfect language to connect to voters, Democrats and their allies use an awful lot of words and phrases no ordinary person would ever dream of saying. The intent of this language is to include, broaden, empathize, accept, and embrace. The effect of this language is to sound like the extreme, divisive, elitist, and obfuscatory enforcers of wokeness. To please the few, we have alienated the many, especially on culture issues where our language sounds superior, haughty, and arrogant. They add, voters would be excused to believe that Democrats believe in these wildly out of touch social positions because of the words that come out of our mouths, words which sound like we are hiding behind unfamiliar phrases to mask extreme intent. I think that is really, really good stuff. I think that is smart and thoughtful. And yes, if you roll your eyes like, oh, who cares about words? Look, that's how politicians communicate with the rest of us. That's how we communicate with each other. The words you choose really, really, really matter. Okay, so let's get into those 45 words and phrases they say you shouldn't use in a minute. Before we do that, it's called a teaser in the business. Before we do that, I want to tell you why you should subscribe to this here channel, and there's two reasons, two words: one, authentic; two, independent. Authentic. I'm always going to give you my honest assessment of the political world. I am never going to get involved in fan service, telling you what you want to hear because that's going to make you more likely to support me. That's not what I do. Independent. I'm not affiliated with any corporate or legacy media, and I'm not affiliated with either party. You're always going to get my straight, honest take. I think there's not enough of that in the political analysis space, and I aim to do it. So I hope you subscribe. Okay. I'm not going to go through the whole 45 words. I will put the Third Way memo in the comment section below so you can check it out. But let's just go. They have several broad categories of like words that they shouldn't say, Democrats shouldn't say, Democratic politicians shouldn't say. So let's just go through a few. So under the category of therapy speak, they say you shouldn't say dialoguing, othering, microaggression, progressive stack. I have no idea what that means. Centering, safe space, or holding space. In the seminar room language, don't say subverting norms, don't say critical theory, cultural appropriation, postmodernism, heuristic, or Overton window. In the organizer jargon, don't say barriers to participation, the unhoused, food insecurity, or person who immigrated. In the gender and orientation correctness, this may be the most important. Don't say birthing person or inseminated person. Don't say pregnant people. Don't say chest feeding. Don't say cisgender. Don't say dead naming. Again, I don't know what that is. And don't say patriarchy. Shifting language of racial constructs. Don't say Latinx, BIPOC, allyship, or intersectionality. Explaining away crime. They say, don't say justice involved, carceration, or involuntary confinement. Is involuntary confinement just mean you're in jail? I think it does. Okay, so we can disagree with a word here or a word there, but what I would say is I actually think that is a very good and smart list, because I think the words Democrats use oftentimes get in the way of what policies they actually believe in. If you go back to the 2024 election, The most effective ad that Donald Trump ran was at the end of the campaign, where the narrator says it was about trans rights, and the narrator says, Kamala Harris is for they, them. Donald Trump is for us, right? It's a classic example of language, the they, them, the pronoun debate being a thing that distances people from Democrats. It says they're weird, they're not like us, they're elitist, they're arrogant, they talk in ways we don't understand. Okay, so and third way, by the way, third way has its critics. People say it's too moderate, too much of a centrist, always against the sort of more liberal end of the party, et cetera, et cetera. But I will note that they are far from alone in talking about this. Let me just go through a couple quotes. Let me start with Brian Schatz, who is a Hawaii Democratic senator, definitely not a moderate, a liberal. But he was asked in an interview with Politico at the end of 2024, sort of what went wrong in 2024. And I want to read a part of what he said. Here's Brian Schatz. He says, I think Kamala did a really good job on focusing on middle-class concerns, but I remember her saying, quote, I'm going to center the needs of the working class. And I thought to myself, I don't know anyone in the world who says center. I know people in politics who say center. I know people in academia. I know people in advocacy who say center. But centering the needs or making space for or all of that is a clear indication that you are not normal. And I put myself in that category. By definition, I am a coastal progressive. But I think this question of language goes pretty deep. Okay, that's Brian Schatz. Again, no moderate, right? And I think that's I think this is really important. But centering the needs or making space for or all of that is a clear indication that you are not normal. A liberal Democratic senator. I've got more for you. In February, Andy Beshear, who is the governor of Kentucky, 2 terms, Democrat, going to run for president. I think a really intriguing potential Democratic candidate. This is what he said in February 2025. I want to get the quote exactly right. He said, we got to talk to people like real human beings. We've sanitized different language so significantly that people don't feel like we are talking to them. Okay. A month later, March of this year, John Fetterman, Democratic senator from Pennsylvania. I would just ask Democrats, start talking like a regular person. Most people are not so sure what an oligarch is. This is he was asked a question about sort of the oligarchs that Donald Trump is playing to. Okay, I really think that there's something very important there. Frank Luntz, a legendary Republican pollster, he was one of the keys to the 1994 Republican takeover of Congress, and in large part because he focused on the language Republicans used to explain to people what they would do. If you think language is tinkering around the edges, the way that politicians talk about issues, the way they talk to voters, the way they talk to each other, if you think it's tinkering on the edges, it's not. I would suggest that the reason that since 1960 only 2 U.S. senators have been elected president, John F. Kennedy and Barack Obama, is because there's a certain way of speaking in the Senate, very formal, very procedurally based, that just doesn't work. If you stay in the Senate too long, Obama was there for 2 years, Kennedy wasn't there very long either. If you stay there too long, you wind up internalizing that language and you sound like a creature of Washington. You don't sound like a normal human being. And yes, it's harder to sound like a normal human being as a politician than you might think. So I think these 45 words and phrases that Third Way has outlined are of critical import. I think every Democrat across the ideological spectrum should check them out and should follow it. Now, the problem is there are a decent chunk of people in the Democratic base who think a lot of these words are critically important to express the situation for either their group or a broader group within the party or within the country. And they don't want to give these things away. The issue there is there are not enough of those people to get someone elected president as a Democrat. That's just a fact. We saw that in 2024. It's just not a big enough group of people. So the question is, do you want to win by using other words, or do you want to stick to centering these words and lose? And I think that's a question Democrats have to ask themselves as it comes to this 2028 presidential nomination fight, which is obviously in its very early days. You must use language, words, phrases that average people understand. that average people can relate to. If you are using words and phrases that people have never heard of before, they are going to think you are weird. And then the words of Brian Schatz, a senator from Hawaii, not normal. And that's the worst thing you can be when you're running for office. You need to be able to identify with people, not make people feel like they have nothing in common with you. So I would urge people, check out the memo in the comment section below. I think it's a really important conversation to have. And I think I didn't know half of the words in that 45 words Democrats shouldn't use. And if I don't know it, a journalist who covers politics all the time, Democrats should absolutely not be using them. That's it for me. As I said earlier, I hope you subscribe. Independent and authentic. Those are my pledges to you. I also hope you check out or like and comment on this video in particular. That just helps me grow my YouTube audience beyond people who are already subscribers. Last thing, tell a friend or an acquaintance or somebody you're in book club with or Bible study with about what I do and why you think it's important. They can subscribe for free, and it helps me build what I'm trying to build here, which is an independent, authentic voice of political analysis as we head into the 2026 midterms and then the 2028 presidential election. All right, everyone, take care.